Scallywags, scoundrels, rogues, and rebels, Asylum Studios is pleased to present a show that will bend your mind, scramble your morals, and ruin your good taste. This is not a show to take home to your mother, and definitely not one for the children. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
If anybody's actually watching this and wondering why don't they go live so I can chat? Maybe someday we can show you what just went on for the last hour and a half. We's going to keep pre-recording here for just a little bit.
Just a couple more times, I'm sure.
But welcome into the Asylum Fantasy Football Show, continuing the assault now on your eyes, not just your ears, as well as your sensibility and good taste. I am your host with the most, the talent, Rick Flieger, and joined as always by what you find at the intersection of alcohol abuse and extreme anger, creepy Uncle Mr. Rick Briggs.
Yes, indeed. It is great to be back. Week one in the books.
Yeah. A bummer of a week one in a lot of ways. There
wasn't a
lot to get thrilled about, I don't think. And a lot of bad news, too, which always happens.
A lot of bad news, a lot of knee-jerk reaction, people losing their minds.
I'm freaking out, Rick. I'm freaking out, and you're going to have to talk me down.
Losing their minds
on a few things. But, hey, you can follow along with the show. Eventually, we'll do this thing live, let you know when it's coming, and you can chat. But meanwhile, hit us up on Twitter, X, whatever the hell they're calling it this week, at Asylum Football, asylumfootball@gmail.com.
Right at the bottom of the screen.
That's right.
At Asylum
And
Football.
now also on YouTube. You don't happen to know what our YouTube page is, Rick. I don't even know what it's called. I need to look into that.
Well, you would just type in Flieger and Briggs, and you can find us.
Yeah. So search for us. You lazy
because
bastards.
It still has a lot of our Hall of Fame interviews still up as well.
Yeah,
so.
I saw that when I was uploading the last show. I'd forgotten about that we had those out on the page.
Yeah.
So, check that out. Back when we were a big deal and could get credentialed to the Hall of Fame.
Right. Actually, stuck out the portion of the interview I had with Morton Anderson. I forget what year it was now, out on Twitter about a month or two ago, just talking about things that he changed basically like mid-career, as far as taking care of himself and doing things.
Well, he played to is about your age.
That's what I'm saying. He played for like another 17 years after that, which was amazing.
So let's get into it, Rick. A couple of headlines. I don't want this show just to turn into talking about injury news, but I think we are required by the Constitution to discuss Aaron Rodgers out after 4 snaps with an Achilles.
Yeah, hey, what can you say? The guy's 39 years old and really, that I can remember, never had anything seriously wrong with him at all. He just got caught up in a bad position and a lot of weight went the wrong way. And that's what happens.
Yeah. It just, what stunned me? Me that I was bummed out by this. Everyone knows
I was too.
I don't care for Aaron Rodgers. He's kind of a hippie, kind of a too cool for school kind of guy.
Right.
And I've spent a lot of time on these airwaves in this studio yelling about that. But, I mean, this was the biggest story in the NFL this year. You know
exactly.
What I mean? It's gone.
You wanted to see the Jets.
Right.
With that defense, with the weapons on offense, guided by Aaron Rodgers, a future Hall of Famer,
right.
Super Bowl winning quarterback. Whether you liked him or not, if you really were just rooting for him to get hurt, shame on you. You're a boob. Don't listen to us, because that kind of stuff, to me, I don't ever root for anyone to get hurt or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, that's just terrible. And I really wanted to see what that division would look like,
right,
with those 4 teams. We'll hit on New England later on, but I mean, they played a pretty good game against Philadelphia. Buffalo, boy, looked a little shaky in my mind, losing to the Jets. And then there's Miami. Yeah. I mean, just an air assault.
Yeah,
that it was against the Chargers.
Yeah, that game was wild. Buffalo, I don't know what to take away from that. We'll probably get into that at some point later. It's just every now and again, Josh Allen has one of them, right? Where he just goes out and turns the ball over on 3 straight possessions. Now, next week, we could, when we talk about overreaction, my prediction next week, he's going to go out. He's going to throw for 275. He's going to run for another 75. He'll come out clean. It's just he's one of them guys. And I don't understand it. When you look at the Aaron Rodgers deal, I think the Jets are still competitive with that defense, right? I think you see a lot of what we saw Monday night, a lot of these 17-16 games, or that's not what it ended up. What was it, 16-16 going into OT, if I'm not mistaken?
I go with.
What I'm curious about is what this means for the surrounding pieces that Aaron Rodgers elevated so much in fantasy circles. Garrett Wilson, most specifically, that catch he made in the fourth quarter might be, and I hate being a prisoner of the moment, one of the best catches, the most dumbfounding things I have ever seen.
It was a great catch. And I mean, this kid is really, and that's another reason you feel sorry for the whole Aaron Rodgers thing. You wanted to see just how high Garrett Wilson could go.
Right.
And things of that nature. But, it's not to be. They're going to have to suck it up and play. And, we talked about some of these knee-jerk reactions. I am so done with the pundits and everybody that has an opinion out there.
Are we pundits?
Colin Kaepernick.
Oh, God.
Matt Ryan. Yeah. I even heard
Tom Brady.
Oh, of course, Tom Brady. I even heard Phillip Rivers.
Oh, no.
It's ludicrous. There's a reason why these guys are out of the league.
Right.
The youngest guy is going to be turning 36 or 7 in November, and he hadn't played in 7 years.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, I don't. That's all nonsense. I think they stick with Zach Wilson. They stick with what they have, and I think what you saw in the second half of that game is who he is and who he's going to be. If he can keep them in games, not turn it over, this is going to hold Garrett Wilson's production down. It's not. I wasn't ever convinced it was going to go to the heights some people were talking about over the summer. On your other favorite fantasy shows, but. He was going to be a low-end one.
Well, let's face it, 84 catches and like 1,100 and some yards last year in his rookie year with Zach Wilson.
Right.
I see it getting better.
Yeah.
Even with Zach Wilson.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. The running game was so dominant. What Breece Hall did. Now a lot of it was kind of the Barry Sanders effect, right? Breaking off big runs, and those still count, and the defense has to account for those. But I'll be curious. That's not going to happen every week. So when they get into a regular routine, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in terms of having some question answered. But I wonder if they can run the ball like that, then Zach Wilson's going to have that opportunity, and Garrett Wilson's going to get his. If they get themselves behind in games, which, again, is unlikely with the defense. I mean, this is going to be impactful, but I don't think it's the end-of-the-world scenario. It is for the Jets. You're not a Super Bowl team with Zach Wilson. They could be a playoff team with the expanded playoff format and that defense, but this was
the way I got it figured. They went to 2 AFC championship games with Mark Sanchez.
Well, that's true, too.
They can get there again with Zach Wilson.
Right.
You not only you brought up Breece Hall. I mean, yeah, he's not going to do that every game. Barry Sanders did almost every game. I'm not saying this guy is Barry Sanders, but that's the kind of stuff that this kid does.
Right.
And, oh, by the way, they still have Dalvin Cook,
right,
who's anything but washed.
No.
And when you have a 1-2 punch like that, now all of a sudden there's a lot more space to throw to.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, yeah, I don't think this team's done.
That's just it. And the main concern we still have there, and it's probably more of a concern with Zach Wilson than it is with an Aaron Rodgers, although Wilson much more mobile, but is not as quick of a decision maker and doesn't have the football IQ. Is that offensive line still a problem? All the praise we're heaping on Breece Hall, that a lot of that was, I don't want to say in spite of the offensive line, but the offensive line had some really good series and some really bad ones. And so I think that continues.
And we've seen it before where there have been better run blocking offensive lines and not real good pass defense, or pass offense, and vice versa. We've seen that before where a quarterback can go back here and make a sandwich, but then when you try to run the ball, they can't go anywhere.
You're going nowhere. And actually, if that was the case, that might be the best thing for New York, right? You go ahead and run the ball. Your defense is going to hold people under 20 and see if you can get it done, and don't let Zach Wilson make the big mistake that's going to kill you.
Right. I agree. I mean, they're going to have to adapt without Aaron Rodgers. Look, I'm not saying the Jets want to be Atlanta. But I mean, offensively,
Right.
Atlanta's making a living with, Tyler Algier. You're never going to see the field now that they got Bijan Robinson. Well, guess what? These guys
that question,
are running wild.
That question got answered real quick.
Real fast.
Real quick.
And that helps the quarterback. Desmond Ridder didn't do anything stupid.
Exactly.
So
just don't screw it up, kid.
Right.
That there's your coaching right there.
Yeah.
Don't screw it up.
Everybody likes to fall back on Trent Dilfer, but guess what? He didn't screw it up.
Yeah.
They won a Super Bowl.
Yeah. So another huge bummer, Rick, J.K. Dobbins also with the Achilles.
Yeah.
I feel bad for that kid. Now, there are two things I really can't stand, and that's the Baltimore Ravens and the Ohio State Buckeyes. So I wasn't prone to root for this kid, but this kid is such a dynamic, great player, and this is year after year with this kid. His career is never going to take off. I thought this was the year.
Was actually watching that touchdown he scored.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching the game with my son, and he goes over to the camera and he does the feed me.
Oh.
And I looked over at my son and I said, that ain't good. I said, this guy can't stay on the field. And by golly, there he goes. I mean, it's so unfortunate because he's such a good player.
Yes, I hate to see it happen. And I think that, the fantasy takeaway from this is, everybody was way, way overpaying this morning for Gus Edwards when waivers ran also with Justice Hill. I mean, I think they're worth picking up. What I'm going to be curious to see, I think now, there was a question where if Dobbins was there and healthy, if he was going to take over that role, the primary running back in Baltimore now is once again Lamar Jackson.
Right.
And so what does that mean for him in November, December, January? We've seen this the last couple of seasons. They seem to, with mixed results, they seem to, in the game this week, at least early on, you could see the effort to keep him in the pocket a little more, to rely on the running backs that they had, and to rely on J.K. Dobbins. Now that he goes out, if Edwards isn't that guy, if Justice Hill isn't that guy, are we back to the old ways? And
we also saw in that game, even though they were running the ball before Dobbins got hurt, pardon me, Lamar was uncomfortable.
Right.
Mark Andrews wasn't in there.
Right.
And he was playing sloppy. He was throwing, that one fumble that he had.
Right.
He's carrying the ball way out here. He's running the ball. He just looked uncomfortable. Could have been first week. I don't know, but it's, there's a lot to take away and unpack from the AFC North, because other than Cleveland, the other three teams, Baltimore was playing Houston and looked shaky at best. Cincinnati and Pittsburgh were completely awful.
Just dog
awful
stuff. We'll keep it PC. We'll keep it family. So a real bummer there. And speaking of the Steelers, Deontay Johnson now out, 4 weeks they're saying with that hamstring.
Right.
I only bring that up is if you want some fantasy advice, which I assume that's why you would be watching this show right now. It's Calvin Austin for me. It's not Allen Robinson. I think Calvin Austin slides right into that Deontay Johnson role, and I think he puts up some numbers. I really do. Well, I hope so. In a PPR format, I think he had a lot of targets. I still think, especially now with Freiermuth with the chest injury is a little bit questionable. Look, I think Allen Robinson is going to be. He's got some value too. He's got a lot of value, especially early on, right? Until there's some rapport built with Calvin Austin, he gets more game experience. But something's got to give with Pittsburgh. They cannot run the football. Yeah, and Najee Harris. I tell you, the more I see this guy, the more it's like, boy, I'm not sure. Well, he is the guy. Yeah, and here you go. So you jumped ahead to the next thing on my outline, which is going to be overreactions, right? Right. I'm freaking out. Now, here's some of my overreactions. You have some, or just some we're hearing, and I think we decide if they are overreactions. And number one, what I have written down here is it more of the same from the Steelers offense? Well, it sure looks like it's more of the same, especially from game plan. Exactly. Matt Canada, I'm sorry. This is getting extremely old, especially being from where we're at, very close to Pittsburgh and close to the whole situation. He had 1 year with Pitt
where the offense was pretty good.
Right.
I mean, some of these other teams, other colleges that he was at, 68th, 39th. I mean, nothing to write home about. Absolutely abysmal in the pro ranks.
Right.
Third play of the game. Oh, it's going to be different in 2023. Third play, jet sweep.
Yep.
Loss of 2 or 3 yards, whatever it was.
Never fails.
No, I mean, this is not high school. This is ridiculous.
And it was, I forget who said it. It was one of the ex-players on one of the networks. There's so many, I can't keep it straight. But I feel like this is the 12th time in the last 2 years I've heard this, that they're out there running a high school offense.
Yeah.
That there's no disguise. I'm not an X's and O's guys, but when I hear this from players, and this is a consistent theme when this offense performs this way, is that they're running an oversimplified high school type offense. And when he gets in a bind or when he's feeling good, either way, it's that jet sweep. It's that wide receiver screen.
Yeah.
You know, what we saw in the preseason, and again, it's the preseason, and here's less than 8,423,000 for everybody out there when you're watching those preseason games, just how meaningless they are. It was drop back. It was run straight ahead. It was getting the ball deep, looking downfield. And if we get in the game when the bullets start flying, it was right back to where they were. And I think this kills Najee Harris's value. You know, I bought into it in the preseason for him, just what they did with the offensive line
Right.
and what I was seeing there. You know, it limits George Pickens. We're going to talk about him later and what I feel is way under usage. And they're going to, when you give a guy like Matt Canada a toy like Calvin Austin, you're going to keep seeing this junk, you know, and that's what it is. It's just junk. It's not all Matt Canada. Kenny Pickett was terrible. He was terrible.
He was terrible.
Inaccurate, you know, and I'm not buying the, you know, in Pittsburgh, I don't know if this went national. They went back and early in the game found one of the 19 times he was sacked and he hit his head off the ground. So now we're dismissing it all of, you know, he didn't play bad. He was concussed and blaming it on the training staff. I don't buy that in today's NFL. They are all over that at this point. He was just bad. He was inaccurate. He was making poor decisions. And I'd like to think that's the aberration, but I don't know.
I have never seen a team since they were off 2 weeks, season opener, and San Francisco 49ers. I never saw a team come out looking so flat and unprepared.
Right.
And, you know, I heard one of the, here we go again, the air quotes, the experts. Well, you know, the Steeler offense had their defense on the field too long. You know, they kept the defense on. They just couldn't slow down San Francisco after a while. They were gassed. Well, guess what? Gave up 7 points on the opening drive of the game and 7 points on the opening drive of the second half.
Right.
They weren't gassed.
No.
That's 14 of the 30 points right there.
And that's where I believe with the Steelers, though, it almost has to be an aberration. I got a really hard time believing that defense is bad. You know, you could convince me the offense is bad. I got a hard time buying that the defense isn't any good.
I'll tell you what, you can convince me real easily because I already know it in my head that the Steelers get out-coached by 85 or 90% of every team they play.
It's at least, especially early in the season, right?
It's awful.
Yeah, it's frustrating. So, you know, I don't want to get too deep into football and make this a Steelers Homer podcast, but, you know, I'm going to be watching, everyone will, but with really great interest this game Monday night against Cleveland, and to see because basically the question becomes, did these Steelers skill position players get overdrafted in fantasy football? You know, Najee Harris, his ADP stayed down. I was higher on Najee Harris than most people, than the consensus. But George Pickens, my God, they were drafting him like he was Andre Johnson.
Yeah.
And Deontay Johnson, same thing, you know, especially locally. And you get that locally in your home leagues and everything. I saw him going 2 rounds above ADP in some circumstances. Right. Now the injury aside, but I'm nervous. I'm scared.
Yeah, it's not an easy start. I mean, you got San Francisco and the clubbing that Cleveland put on Cincinnati. Look, I know Cincinnati. I think they started 0-2 last year as well.
Yeah.
It's a slow starting team, but I'll tell you what, Cleveland looked really good.
They did.
And Deshaun Watson aside, I mean, Deshaun Watson did nothing special in that game. As a matter of fact, I had some of the stuff, 16 for 29, $154. You know, there's nothing great about that. And Nick Chubb ran all over them, and Deshaun Watson had a few yards himself. It was just the defense smothered Cincinnati.
Right.
And, Cleveland capitalized on it.
And this is becoming a theme with Cincinnati. It appears every season Joe Burrow coming off of an injury of some type, and it takes them a little while to get going.
Right.
So, I don't know what that'll be. So, all right, Rick, what are you overreacting? What's got you freaking out about?
Well, I don't really have any freak. I mean, I'm not really freaking, but I'll tell you
Lose
what,
it.
I know Kansas City's not a run-heavy team. I mean,
Right.
We all know that. But 15 rushes in a total game, they were back in the opening game, 15 rushes by their running backs. Usually don't get it done when you're being outgained by the other team in passing as well.
Right.
And it just – they don't have the guy if Kelsey's not in there.
Well, that's exactly.
He's the guy. He was the guy when Tyreek Hill was there.
Right.
And he was the guy even when they had, I even forget some of the other guys that even had in the last few years, Sammy Watkins or whatever.
Right.
It was always Kelsey. When Kelsey was out, because he's never out, but he got injured.
Right.
It shows a little chink in that Kansas City armor.
Oh,
and, you hate to say that one guy can dictate an offense, but there again, it's the same position. We talk about Mark Andrews with Baltimore. Right. Kelsey's almost that same linchpin right there for the Kansas City offense. Now Mahomes can do some magical stuff, and I'm sure they're going to right the ship, and I'm sure Kelsey will be back. I don't think he's seriously injured. But I tell you what, they just don't have a real playmaker in the wide receiver position, as far as I can see. Kadarius Toney couldn't catch a cold the other night.
Well, none of them can. And that's what this was the first one I had written down is
in the game,
Kansas City Chiefs don't have a wide receiver. They have none.
Yeah. And the play they lost the game on was a perfect pass.
Right.
And then it turned into a pick six.
Yeah. Yeah. And we saw it there. It's some stuff you could attribute to being game one, too.
Right.
That weird crossing pattern where they cross paths at the ball and either one of them could catch it.
Right.
But, it'll be interesting, assuming Kelsey's back this week or whenever he comes back. I can't judge, and that's what I want to say for anything. If you drafted a Kansas City wide receiver, because we're always chasing that since when Tyreek Hill was there, who's the second one? Because this passing offense is so good. Who's going to be the other one? And the answer is always none of them.
Right.
And now, since Tyreek Hill's left last year and going into this year, who's going to be the number one wide receiver? I am going to say, and this isn't an overreaction, there isn't one. There isn't one. There'll be a game where Valdez-Scantling has
you and I talked about it on one of the previous shows, and I have never bought in on Kadarius Toney and the hype on him going into preseason or going into camp. Oh, I mean, the sky's the limit for this guy.
Well, he's more interested in sending tweets about the Giants for whatever
exactly.
reason. He did something right with that kid.
I know. I mean, you start catching a few perfectly thrown balls and then talk some crap, but until you start catching it, no one really cares anything of what you say.
No. So, but I mean, there just isn't another one, and I'm going to be very, very curious. Number one, Pacheco had a nice game, but they got away from him. What I was surprised by, Jerick McKinnon, hardly involved at all.
Right.
This is a guy, I was getting at the tail end of drafts, and I loaded up on him everywhere because he had games. He was a risk. He'd almost be more of a best ball type of guy.
Yeah.
But in a game where you don't have your tight ends, you don't have your security blanket, your wide receivers are just things are clanging off their hands like I've never seen before. And then the best pass catching back you have, or at least the most reliable, I think Pacheco probably is better, but what we saw last year was McKinnon was getting a lot of touches, and that was something they could rely on and run that inside shovel pass and all the creative things they do. Didn't even go to him. So I'm curious, we get Kelsey back, because where my mind's starting to go, I don't think I know we didn't talk about it much at all, and I haven't heard a huge rambling about it in the offseason. Maybe it happened, and I just didn't hear it. Eric Bieniemy's gone. Look, I know Andy Reid's a good creative play caller, but let's not shortchange Bieniemy here. How much does that dynamic change? Obviously when Kelsey's back and healthy, we're going to still have that, but we're going to have this same crazy play calling, that makes bad wide receivers look good.
Well, the thing is, you couldn't make them look any better with some of the passes he was throwing to them, and they still missed them.
And that's the thing.
Mean, I can't fault Andy Reid or credit Eric Bieniemy for that kind of boob play. I mean, it looked like you've had magnets before where you take like the same poles, you go to try to put them together, and it kind of goes like that.
Oh, I haven't done that.
That's what the balls in their hands look
school.
like.
I like that picture now. Just Kadarius Toney goes up. Oh, we got a camera now, and it just goes like that. That'd be awesome.
Exactly. I mean, it was. They were both, north. They weren't north and south. They were both the same.
Yeah, I did. Just
pardon me. I got worked up and swallowed crooked.
You need the Heimlich maneuver or something. I'm not going
to get it, but
yeah, I'm not good in an emergency. I will turn and run away.
I know.
I told that fateful story. I won't tell it again. We got some negative feedback about the time there was that emergency at that gas station by the old studio up your way, and I left in the middle of the emergency because I panicked.
Well, you couldn't do anything.
No,
I mean, you're useless.
No, well, essentially, yeah. And so I don't know why anybody would want my help, but that lady in there really thought I should give it. I vehemently disagreed.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I'd want you helping. You probably like later on the floor and jumped on her or something.
Yeah, you don't want me to give you CPR?
No.
All right.
No.
So another overreaction, Rick. I'm seeing a lot of, and I'm torn on. So I'm curious what you think. This Dolphins offense is unstoppable.
I think it's very, very, very good. Nothing's unstoppable, especially when you start playing. Yeah, New England will figure some stuff out to slow them down. Teams like Philadelphia, teams like San Francisco. There's, to be honest, I mean, if you sit and think about, we talk about all the great quarterbacks and the offenses in the AFC. You can't really think of a real dominant defense in the AFC in 2023.
No. I thought the Steelers were going to be that, but so far that doesn't
Cleveland
look like
right now seems to be the one stepping up.
Closest,
Indianapolis has a decent defense, but they're so inept on offense right now they can't win that way. But there's really no dominant defenses. So theoretically, I mean, for the most part, they may be unstoppable if they stay healthy.
Right.
I mean, especially with Tua. Concussion prone as he was last year, I always worry about that kind of stuff. But, they're going to have to start really putting some pressure on this guy.
Right.
I mean, they're going to have to key on putting pressure on him. And the problem with that is now you have Tyreek Hill and Waddle out there.
Right.
And, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, and I mean, everybody knew Tyreek Hill was going to be a top 3 wide receiver this season, right? There was no question about that. I was actually surprised how low, and I don't remember what it was, but it felt a little low, not crazy low, Jalen Waddle's ADP was coming into the season. And Hill's going to continue to be the top dog there, and this is boring to talk about, that this is all about Tua. If he stays healthy, I think this is who they are. I really do. Now, you're right. Teams are going to be able to get pressure on him, get him uncomfortable, but you can't take away Tyreek Hill. You can't take it. If you do, then Jalen Waddle's running free. I don't know what teams are supposed to do there.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, you say, well, it's going to be unstoppable. Yeah, look, they're not going to score 45 every week, but this team can put up 30, 34
I think
on a weekly basis pretty easily, and you're going to win a lot of football games.
And they can score right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, they are actually the modern day Air Coryell.
Right.
I mean, they really are.
I think that's who they're going to be. There was so much debate on, what the running back situation was going to look
Doesn't
like.
matter.
And, there was so much talk about bringing in Dalvin Cook. I don't think it mattered. Gaskin was fine. Nobody else really touched the ball, which was a surprise. Yeah.
He did fine.
He
scored.
They didn't even dress him. How many lectures that I have to listen to on fantasy podcasts about that kid. They didn't even dress him this week, but I don't think that's a position of strength. I think, quite honestly, the running back that's going to be on the field, start looking up people's running backs pass pro stats, because I think it's going to be the guy who can protect Tua the most, who's going to be on the field the most for that team.
Right. No doubt.
Anything else you're overreacting to?
Well, not really overreacting, but I think, well, maybe a lot of people are because they're already saying, oh, we overpaid for Danny Dimes and so forth. How bad are the Giants or how good are the Cowboys? Because this isn't going to happen on a weekly basis. Dak Prescott did absolutely nothing.
No,
he did
douche.
nothing.
Squad douche.
Right. I mean, and he didn't have to. I mean, it's not a knock on him. I mean, he didn't have to. I mean, the defense just took over that game. Tony Pollard could run at will when he had to, and the Giants were just completely disheveled from the get-go. But, how good is – they're already anointing them, Super Bowl bound. Let's put the brakes on that.
They're always doing that with the Cowboys. Let me tell you, if any game, and it had nothing to do with the game or the teams involved, but if any game pissed me off more, it was that one. So as, of course, happens on a Sunday, the first Sunday night football of the year, you're really looking forward to it, right?
It's always Dallas on Sunday night football.
I get waylaid. Nobody cares what I had to do, but I get waylaid, so I'm not anywhere near a TV or anywhere near a phone to watch the game. So I get in the truck, turn it on the radio, and comes up on the display that Dallas is up 33-0. And I'm thinking, man, as a guy who's got CD Lamb in every league, as a guy who has Tony Pollard in a lot of leagues, I'm thinking, oh, man, finally, those close matchups, they're over now. I'm victory lapping. And they've scored 2 freaking defensive touchdowns. Yeah. They've done no skill, but Pollard got in the end zone. CD Lamb, what's he end up with, 3 catches for 77 yards, I think. I mean, just they're up 33-0, and I got nothing out of it, absolutely nothing. If you had Dak Prescott, I don't even think he crested 10 fantasy points last week.
Right.
Just the most damnably frustrating thing. The Giants, I thought they were better coached than that. I honestly chalked that one up to just there was the blocked field goal and the touchdown. That thing just got away from them. The weather stunk. They gave up. I honestly feel that way. I was never buying into this team's going to win the East and make a deep run in the playoffs. I don't think Daniel Jones is that guy. I really don't. But there's no way they're that bad either. And the Cowboys, the defense might be that good. Cowboys defense probably
I know
is
you
that
weren't
good.
because I think in the last show that we had, we argued because I had Dallas in second behind Philadelphia and you had Washington.
Yeah.
Thinking that they had leapfrogged over Dallas. I don't think that's happening. I mean, after watching Washington against Arizona, who we thought were a total dumpster fire, had all kinds of problems with that defense.
Sam Howell looked terrible.
Yeah.
Looked completely lost.
He really did. And I just want to get back real quick. I had it written down, and I forgot to mention when we were talking about Deshaun Watson. The one thing that did concern me, they had their way with Cincinnati, no doubt, but Elijah Moore, 3 catches on 7 targets.
Yeah.
Amari Cooper, 3 catches on 7 targets.
Oh, believe me, I know.
And, and they both totaled 80 yards, receiving yards between them. So, yeah, they've got some work to do on offense too. So, I mean, Nick Chubb, can't carry an offense. He's a great tool, but you better start connecting to these wide receivers or it's 8-in-a-box time. And, then it gets a little difficult.
I'm willing to, in that game, almost throw out any of the passing stats based on how bad the weather was. I mean, it was monsooning the entirety of the game. I don't think that in any way excuses how bad Cincinnati's offense was. I'm still gobsmacked by that.
82 yards passing for Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
And having him
I don't know how he got 82.
Having him on your fantasy team, T. Higgins with a goose egg.
Yeah, a big fat 0.
That is not only is it an anomaly, that's an abomination. Yeah. I mean, how does he go without anything?
Have T. Higgins and you can't get the ball once to him, one time. Yeah, but so the whole thing, you almost throw that out. What I do wonder with Deshaun Watson, I'm willing to throw the numbers out necessarily. He did run the ball for what were his 45 rush yards, had the rushing TD. So all in all, a pretty good game.
Oh yeah,
but he still threw that ridiculous interception, and this is something that's always made me nervous about him. Even when we crowned him king of the world back when he was in Houston, and before we knew he was a pervert, a sex pervert, as the kids say. You know what I I mean? And so, you
imagine
worry
a lot of
about
old
that.
people say that too.
Oh, you think so?
I would imagine.
He's a sex pervert.
Sex pervert. Sex pervert.
I always wondered, is there any other type of pervert?
I don't know.
Like, I think it almost feels like a double negative or something.
I don't know. I guess, like if you put like mustard on a chocolate bar, that could be like a food pervert because that's kind of bizarre, I don't know.
I guess I would classify somebody who would do that as a pervert.
Hey, get on at Asylum Football on Twitter. Let us get any other kind of perverts. This is the kind of stuff that we need to discuss.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already bored of football. I got to be honest with you. So I'd rather talk about perversion.
Never bored about football, but week 1, it was
terrible. It was
strange. More than terrible. I mean, yeah, a lot of the games were terrible, but it was strange.
Yeah.
Just a lot of the games that we covered. And I mean, I was laughing almost out loud to myself down in the basement watching these games, watching Tyler Algier just run wild. He'll never be on the field. Bijan Robinson.
And Robinson had a huge game, too.
Yeah, he was a great runner. But we already knew what Atlanta was going to do.
Yeah.
It's not like Tyler Algier's 35 and he's putting them out the pasture.
No.
God, I don't know.
But you look at some of these poor performances. You mentioned T. Higgins with the donut. DJ Moore, 2 catches for 25 yards. They were going to be Montana and Rice. I heard all off season.
Right.
You were not. That was one of the ones you were not allowed to say otherwise.
No.
Or you would be called all kinds of things, most of them ending with "ist," if you know what I mean. And, what else? Najee Harris, the 31 year. I'm worried about that. We're going on 2 years of this nonsense. DeAndre Swift couldn't even get on the field, 3 total yards.
Yeah. Exactly.
Explain that one to me.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's play a little game.
Oh.
We have a little bit of time here.
Oh.
Let's go NFC.
Can I use buttons?
No.
Oh.
Go ahead. That's not worried at all.
Okay.
And the other one is you're worried a lot.
I'll forget, so I'll just say it. Not worried at all, or worried a lot.
Seattle.
I will say not worried at all, but I didn't remember we had many an argument. I wasn't buying into Geno backing that up and that being a great team.
No, but it was.
So I guess I'm worried that I'm right. For
you're not
else,
worried.
Right?
I'm just concerned about saying the team is.
Yeah, I think.
Because I mean, they were playing the Rams, and the Rams were basically, everyone says they're in rebuild mode.
Yeah,
well, they look pretty good.
They come out and wax that ass is what they did.
Arizona.
I guess I'd be worried if I was Josh Dobbs because he may die.
I feel better after what they did. Of course, they play Washington.
Mm-hmm.
They may get spanked 42-0.
I think that's going to happen a lot more often. Howe was just so bad. He was. What little bit I only saw it in the red zone. It felt like Washington was dominating that game. It was just the turnovers and the ineptitude of Sam Howell. I never even felt like Washington was in danger of losing that, even when it got tied up and they got behind. It just
and that's the thing that I think sometimes that's what's concerned. You don't even think that they're in trouble, and then they're going to end up losing games.
They got about a 15-year history of being able to do that. Yeah,
yeah. I don't know. I mean, there were just a lot of backstories that that we don't know what's going on in some obviously in any of these locker rooms and so forth. But I don't know. I think you have to go another 2-3 weeks before things start to level out a little bit.
Well, and that dovetails nice. And kind of the next thing I had, lazy fantasy shows like us, you spend the entire off season asking questions, and so, I'm curious. Some of these, did we get our answers in week 1 or are we still waiting? And, this loosely translates into overreactions too. So, I'll go back to what we were talking about on the top of the show. I think the biggest discussion anyone had after Dalvin Cook got signed is what's that usage split going to look like? And we come out of that game, Breece Hall, 11 total touches, Cook 16. So pert near a 50-50 split. I mean, it's not, but pretty even. Do you think we maintain that? Or where my mind goes, they're easing Breece Hall back in, as great as he was. Do we see that start to turn the other direction? And the question becomes, in a month, does Dalvin Cook have standalone value?
I think that we're going to see probably a total shift of what we would have seen if Rodgers would have stayed in there. I think it is probably going to maintain pretty close to a 50-50 split because they're going to have to run the football.
It might have to out of necessity, right? For the amount they're going to run the ball.
I mean, if they don't, I think they're making a big mistake. If you're going to throw that whole team and the whole season on Wilson's shoulders again, I think that's a big mistake. When
we've
you
seen
have
how that ends.
Breece Hall and you have Dalvin Cook. I mean, they lost Breece Hall last year,
right?
And they never really could pick it up after that. But look, you got Breece Hall, you got Dalvin Cook, you got Garrett Wilson. You've got a lot of pieces there. Just don't get stupid with it.
Yeah,
use what you have equally. And intelligently. I think they'll be fine. That defense is championship caliber.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to continue to happen there. And Breece Hall, think about the luxury of having a guy like that you're bringing in relatively fresh in the fourth quarter. You know what I mean? What a luxury. And I can actually see in the middle parts of the game, Dalvin Cook getting a big, we'll hit the home run, we'll lead it off with Breece Hall and let him close that thing. I think is what we might see.
And I guess to answer maybe from a fantasy perspective, like you're talking about Dalvin Cook or Breece Hall. Yeah, I think you can start them both. I mean, it goes back to that old year I had Ricky Williams and Ronnie Brown. I mean,
see, I don't think this is that. I really don't.
How does this play out? I mean,
I am of the mind now. It's still going to be Dalvin Cook's going to get plenty of work if Breece Hall keeps doing this. And again, he's not going to bust off the 140 yards on 11 carries all that often. But if he keeps performing the way he is, and I have no reason to doubt that he will, because he did this right up till the moment he got hurt last year, and then he pops right back in and starts doing it again. At what point, and again, this is where this would be so much more fun to see with Aaron Rodgers in that running game, at what point does that pendulum have to start switching? Dalvin Cook's a nice running back, but this kid's doing what he's doing every time he touches the ball. I'm confident he's 100% healthy. When does this go from, right now 60-40 Cook to 50-50 to 70-30 Hall, which is where I could see this thing ending up?
Because I think when you have someone like a Breece Hall, I mean, you made the point yourself. You have him, at the beginning of the game, he's nice and fresh. Dalvin Cook gets in there, during the heat of the battle through a lot of the middle game, and Breece Hall's fresh again.
Yeah.
If it's 70-30, now he's not so fresh.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think Dalvin Cook's hurting you.
No.
You know what I'm saying? And if they can keep getting production from both, and Breece Hall is more dynamic, but if a lot of that workload can be taken off of Breece Hall, who's just recovered from a bad knee injury, maybe you don't have to overwork him.
Well, and if I'm the Jets, I agree. As a fantasy owner, I have concerns. Obviously, Breece Hall, snap him in your lineup, you never think twice about it. I'm reticent to put Dalvin Cook in my lineup till I see a little more. You know what I mean? Because I think he starts to become touchdown dependent. What we don't know, and maybe we never find out because this offense isn't going to be very good without Aaron Rodgers. The biggest question I always had was who's going to get the goal line carries, right?
Right.
And if Dalvin Cook becomes touchdown dependent, they're not going to be in the red zone very often.
And how much are they going to throw to the running backs?
That's the other question.
That's one of the biggest questions I have with Wilson as opposed to Rodgers. Rodgers would.
Right.
There's no problem with that. I mean, he did it in Green Bay. Kirk Cousins threw to Dalvin Cook, in Minnesota. To be quite honest, I don't even recall what they did with Breece Hall last year as far as throwing to him. I don't even know what his receiving stats were.
He was put. I don't know. I don't have a stats in front of me,
but I know
he was putting up numbers.
I know he was pretty heavy in it. Yeah. I just didn't realize, the extent of it. But if he was under Wilson, if he was heavily used through the air attack, I don't see why him and Cook won't both be. Well, that's hard to say. Will not both be used equally.
Will not both be.
Yes.
Will not both be. Will not both be.
Yeah.
There you go. Good job.
Air attack.
Good job.
Yeah.
All right, I think another thing we talked a lot about all off season, especially as we got through the preseason, the whole running back situation in Seattle. And the question becomes: was that question answered that this is Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet is just a spell guy? You're talking now. Walker himself only got 12 carries, 4 catches. Charbonnet 3 attempts overall. Was this the game getting out from underneath them? Do we think there's a split there?
I don't know. I think I was under the impression Kenneth Walker was the man, and Charbonnet was a nice, added depth piece, and maybe like another added dimension.
Right.
But right now, to me, I still think Walker's the guy.
Yeah.
I mean, Pete Carroll never was, a real running back by committee guy. Of course, he had Marshawn Lynch. Why would you be?
Right.
For many years. But he's always tried to have that guy who always seemed to get that injury.
Right. Yeah. Well, you blame a lot of that on Rashad Penny, right? I mean, he's
right.
I feel like he's been in the league 25 years and has played 7 games.
Yeah, and then there's another one. I can't remember what his name was just a few years ago. Right after Lynch retired, and he would, he'd have one magnificent game, he's gone.
Yeah, there's a myriad. Yeah, what I worry about there too. I think Charbonnet right now, unless Walker gets hurt, he doesn't have any standalone value. I'm not messing with him. Hell, I'd cut him. I'd go that far to say, because at some point you're going to see too Kenneth Walker having huge games. You're going to bring freaking DJ Dallas in, and he's going to start stealing touchdowns. Pete Carroll he hates fantasy football, and he kills you there. But there seemed to be a lot of debate, that split, could we even see that thing flip with Walker coming off of the injury? The answer to that one was no. And I think we have that answered at this point already. Kyle Pitts, can we finally say he's a bust, Rick? Is it done finally? After the first year, I have never had guts enough to draft him. Right.
Where people's been drafting him. And one of the few times that I was really correct and nailed it, because, I don't know. I just don't understand why they don't use an athlete.
3 targets, Rick.
Yeah.
3 targets.
I don't understand it. I mean, there's got to be something there that we're missing, but you watch him play. I sure don't know what it is.
No, because on his targets, he tends to look pretty good, right?
Right.
And, and we talked about it in the offseason, what they do, they've got him in blocking, a lot. He's not getting out in patterns very much. And, I'm willing to say after 1 week, maybe this belongs in overreactions, but I don't think a lot of people are surprised by it. I think in terms of fantasy football, he's a bust. He is not part of that offensive game plan in that way.
And it makes no sense. Pardon me. Like you said, he's in there blocking a lot. I understand he's going to be in there blocking a lot because they run the football a lot.
Right.
The old Steelers used to do that. But, Heath Miller was not a fantasy bust by any stretch of imagination. Yeah. He wasn't a Travis Kelce or somebody like that. He's a good, solid, numbers-producing tight end in fantasy football over the course of a year. They just don't use him for anything. And they've got a young quarterback. We saw Bryce Young in Carolina, who was his primary target? Hayden Hurst.
Hayden Hurst, absolutely.
I mean, I don't understand why Atlanta refuses to use someone who was so highly touted.
Oh my God.
Highly sought after and highly ignored.
Yeah. I mean, he was drawing comparisons to Antonio Gates.
Yeah.
Tony Gonzalez coming into the league, and I bought the hype. You watch the guy play in college, but here's the thing: lest you think, I guess I got to point at the camera, lest you think it's going to change, it's not gonna. Because how long you see how dynamic Bijan Robinson is catching the ball out of the backfield. You see how well Algier still is running the ball. Those 2 dudes are going to be on the field at the same time, and then good luck figuring that out. And any additional targets that may have been going to Kyle Pitts, that's what Bijan Robinson's role is going to be, right?
Sure.
And it's just going to be, I think this is the stat line: 3 targets, 4 targets, 1 target, 5 targets. It's just there's not enough usage there. It's nothing to do with Kyle Pitts. It's that offense. I think it's foolhardy. I honestly do. Well, maybe it's not. I mean, if Algiers keeps running like that, and B. John Robinson can catch 7 balls a game. What the hell you need Kyle Pitts for? I guess.
Because you're not playing Carolina every week, and that's the problem.
The rubber will meet the road here eventually.
Exactly, and they've got a young quarterback, and you would think that would be one way to get him some confidence in the passing game. Go to this guy. He's huge. He's got great hands, and he's fast.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we're just dumb. I don't know.
Well, that tends to be the consensus.
Yeah.
Amongst most people. George Pickens, 7 targets enough for you? The consensus became during the preseason, this guy was going to be had the potential to be a wide receiver 1.
If you're going to have an offense like they touted they were going to have, 7 targets is not enough.
Right. Simple
as that.
I mean, Pickett threw the ball 40 times, didn't he? 40, I can't remember. It was a lot.
All 3 completions. But I mean, it was so bad. I mean, it's hard to really judge. But, yeah, I mean, that is where, you and I are not huge stat guys, but I think targets is a very important stat. If you're not throwing to somebody, they're not going to put up big numbers.
One wouldn't think.
No. So, yeah, I mean, look, I mean, you've got to get the ball to a guy that can make a catch like an octopus just about over anybody. And if you can't throw the ball to him 10 times a game at least, who are you throwing it to?
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of answering this question, we led off the show with Matt Canada. I now have a season and a game where George Pickens wasn't the primary wide receiver in this offense. I don't understand it. I don't know why. If Canada's shown anything, he sticks to his guns. I don't see it's going to change. And with this usage, and 7's pretty high for George Pickens.
Right.
And they were in a position where they were throwing the ball a lot, and Deontay Johnson went out. For whatever reason, he is rarely the first look unless it's 3rd and inches, and that's when Canada likes to drop back and heave a prayer 60 yards down the field. Never understand that one either. But I just don't think, George Pickens, from a skill standpoint, it's hard to say after what Garrett Wilson did, but, this is what this cat can do.
I just don't have any confidence in Steelers coaching staff.
No.
And that is sad to say.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have just no faith that they can do anything, they're so pig-headed, it seems to me, that they just won't change anything.
I think George Pickens could be Justin Jefferson, but they will not use him in that way. Number one, the route tree is not creative enough. And number 2, they're just not going to get the ball to him. I'll be curious. I do have a question going into week 2. I said, in my opinion, the replacement for Deontay Johnson is Calvin Austin. But does this finally force them to treat George Pickens like the number 1 wide receiver he is? Because right now he, in theory, is being treated as a 2, and really in that game he's being treated as a 3 because it was Deontay Johnson, Calvin Austin, and George Pickens seem to be the last resort. And I'll be damned if I can understand that. I don't get it.
And I mean, and Allen Robinson had just as many targets.
Mainly in the second half.
True,
but same thing. You got a talent like that, you don't need to spread it out.
Yeah, that's
Throw
it.
to him every time.
Yeah, when you're down big, take some shots. I mean, this dink and dunk, and I mean, it's the same game plan no matter what the kind of game it is.
And think about this. This has just turned into a Steelers rant. You can tell we're a little bitter about this game. But think about this. If you're the coach and you're in a game where your quarterback is throwing 3 yards behind everybody, who on your team could maybe bail you out of some of these?
Right.
There's one dude. Yeah, you can't throw him the ball. No, that'd be crazy.
He's too fast. He throws 6 yards behind him. I don't know.
Well, that could be.
Well, let's get off the Steeler rant.
He was that bad. All right, the last one we had, Rick, and I think this was answered with a big resounding yes. And I have to give myself. We might want to get back to this. I always enjoyed this, but I'm going to give it to myself for here in week 1. Oops, I just fat fingered it like Rick Briggs. I stink, Rick. I was refusing to buy it. I didn't say it wouldn't happen, but I was the Debbie Downer. Calvin Ridley going to return to his pre-injury suspension form. The answer is, oh, hell yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hell yes.
He's better than he was, I think. Honest to God, yeah.
And look what they did in Jacksonville. They discovered with both the coaching staff and the quarterback, hey, that dude's pretty good at catching footballs.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep throwing at him. And boom, eight receptions in the end zone, over 100 yards. It's funny how that worked.
We
out.
can't stop him, so let's throw to him.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
they can't stop him, so let's throw to him. That's
wow,
brilliant.
did he look great.
Oh.
That's the game, I was focusing on fairly early on when the Steeler game was out of hand. And if I was flipping off the red zone, that was the game I was going to. And he looked better even than the numbers ended up being.
Yeah, he really did. And I mean, that, Lawrence didn't look super sharp, especially early in the game. But, week one. But Ridley was spot on from the opening whistle to the end of the show. I mean, end of the game. And, man, he is so good.
Yeah. I Debbie downed it. I really did. And I stink. I was terrible.
You were on that one. There's no doubt. I finally got one right.
And what I was happiest to see, I honestly, I don't know if we talked about it on the air or not. I don't remember. But what I was most worried about, just beyond the degradation of skills, was this guy hadn't really played competitive football in so long. I was waiting for that hamstring. I was waiting for that groin pull, something like that. And it didn't happen. Just in tremendous shape, got out of that thing healthy. And
the good thing about that, too, was, he came back. He showed up, the mini camps and everything, and then training camp. And yeah, I mean, he just worked his butt off. I think, he knows what's at stake. And I think he also realizes this is a pretty good football team.
It is. Yeah, and to your point, Trevor Lawrence wasn't sharp, and at times he didn't even look good. He's going to get better. This is just a symptom of everything we saw in week one, except for down in Miami.
Yeah.
But just these guys play so little in the preseason. These first couple of games are like preseason games, and I think Trevor Lawrence gets back to and exceeds what he was at the end of last season, and that's scary to think about what that means.
It's going to be an interesting game.
Ridley.
It's going to be an interesting game this week when you have a Trevor Lawrence who does have wide receivers against Patrick Mahomes who doesn't.
Yeah, so, and again, it all comes down to Kelsey. Right?
Yeah, it does.
I assume he's going to play because they were pretending like he was going to play for a while there Thursday. And I read somewhere that had the game been Sunday, they were confident he was going to play. So I hope so. I need to know what that offense is without Bieniemy, with this conglomerate, this clown car of mediocre receivers they have. And I don't know I can't believe I'm saying it. I don't know who the Kansas City Chiefs are right now.
Not yet, but we will. Well, before we end the show,
all right,
I'm going to get off of fantasy just for a minute get back to one of our old topics that we said we were going to start covering, and we haven't yet because we do technical difficulties, whatever. The absurd tweets.
Oh, yeah.
So I have one that we wanted to discuss, and I have more than one, but we only have time for one.
Oh, he's reaching for his phone. I'm going to show you, Rick. There is a way you can, if you let me know about these ahead of time, we can show them on the screen to all our fine listeners.
Yeah, I just thought of it just now, or I would have. Yeah,
pretty good show prep.
But I remembered I'd saved them, and so I do want to cover one, and I'll call him out. It was made by a Caleb Mansfield at Caleb721 on
so you're
Twitter.
Just calling them out by
name.
I
don't care.
I like it.
Yeah, and the tweet was, Dr. Pepper is the superior soft drink, and it's not up for discussion.
It's not up for discussion.
It's not. No, it's just not. I mean, it's just Caleb's fact, apparently,
As someone who drinks 15 gallons of Diet Pepsi a day, I'd be willing to have the discussion with Caleb. I would.
It's not up for discussion.
I guess. All right, we'll see you next week, everybody.
Those are the most absurd tweets. And we're going to call out these boobs every time I can find one. I've got a couple more saved, so we're in good shape there for at least a couple more weeks. So I just Twitter surf.
The arrogance of the internet, that whatever I think is just what it is. And these people honestly believe it. This one probably leans more to the line of shtick, you know what I mean, than the LeBron James is better than Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan combined.
Yeah.
No debate. You know, those
Right.
people I think are dumb enough to actually believe it. I think this guy just is a stoner and really likes Dr. Pepper, or really had a really good Dr. Pepper last night, and that's all his stoner ass can remember. You know, we know a few of those guys in the caveman league.
True.
Right?
Yeah. I don't even know if they really like Dr. Pepper, but I know one likes PBR. So who knows what the taste buds do.
Do you like Dr. Pepper?
I'm not, well, you know me, I'm not a soda or pop, whatever you want to call it, drinker, but I can drink a Dr. Pepper, but I would much prefer to have like a squirt or a root beer, something like that.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like Dr. Pepper better than the colas, you know, Pepsi, Coke, whatever.
I find it inoffensive as a drink. Like if it's all that's around, you know, I could have one. It wouldn't hurt my feelings at all. But those god awful college football commercials have really turned me off on them. The first year, it seems that they were mildly entertaining, and I actually found myself looking forward to the championship game to see how it concluded. They have so jumped the shark at this point to turn a bad phrase. Now I hate them and I want them to go away. So maybe Caleb can take Dr. Pepper and go to some desert island somewhere and leave us all the hell alone.
That would be good. And that's not up for discussion either.
Not up for discussion.
True.
I would like to do a show that's just called Not Up for Discussion.
Or no debate.
Where we discuss things that aren't up for discussion.
Yeah.
We debate things for which there's no debate.
There's no debate. Yeah.
All right. Should we get out of here?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to try to play closing bed music. We'll see how that goes.
But hey, thanks for joining us anyway.
Well, that's a little hot, don't you think? Let's see,
Not
how
really.
can I turn that down?
Sounds great.
Wait a minute. What is that?
Oh, no.
Listen to that. What is that? Where did that come from? Was that a sitar?
Maybe a harp?
I don't know.
Harpsichord, maybe?
How did that get in my studio?
Kind of soothing, though, isn't it?
Yeah. So do we just end on this? I almost feel bad turning it off.
Yeah, let's.
All right. Well,
first time for everything.
Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back same time, same channel next week. We'll see if we get brave enough to do this thing live and you can interact with the show. We'll get that out. Check it out over search Finger and Bricks on YouTube. We'll actually get that address for everybody.
Yeah.
At Asylum Football on Twitter, X, whatever it is this way. Email us, asylumfootball@gmail.com. Until next time, we'll see you.
And I'll start something else. Take care.
Oh, we're doing the Mile High
Visual
salute
now.
now.
Yes,
I like
sir.
it. As long as you give me the take care, you know I can't end this.
I
Show.
know.
This is awful, by the way. Oh, hold on. Picking up.
That's a waterfall. Oh, no. It's the same thing over and over.
Yeah. But I don't know what it is. All right, salute him again. We got to turn this
I've
off.
already done that.
No,
We're done.
No double salutes. See you next time.